Sergeant John Ryder stared at the holographic image hovering above his wrist communicator, tears of grief and rage stinging his eyes. His son, Caleb, forever frozen at 10 years old, grinned back at him, gap-toothed and carefree, a lifetime ago, before the cocker ripped Ryder's heart out and burned his world to ash. 5 years. 5 long, bloody years since those chitinous bastards snatched Caleb away, all to gain leverage in their pissing match with the Terran Alliance over some worthless ball of rock on the edge of nowhere. Ryder remembered that day with a clarity that cut like broken glass. He'd been elbow-deep in the guts of a malfunctioning harvester when his wife's scream shattered the morning calm. He'd found her on the porch, a cocker death commando looming over her, its plasma-sheathed talons pressed to her throat. More alien soldiers swarmed the homestead, smashing through windows, kicking down doors. One emerged from the house, clutching a squirming, terrified Caleb, and Ryder's blood turned to ice in his veins. They tried to fight, of course. Ryder had lunged for his shotgun, only to be swatted aside like a bothersome insect. His wife, fierce and defiant even with an energy blade kissing her jugular, spat curses in the snarling face of her captor. It was the last thing she ever did. The cocker opened her throat with a casual flick of its wrist, painting the walls with arterial scarlet. Ryder screamed, his rage and grief a raw wound, but it was no use. The aliens were already gone, vanished into the shimmering heat haze, with his son in their clutches. Numbly, moving like a sleepwalker, Ryder gathered his wife's body in his arms, feeling the last fleeting warmth leach from her skin. He knelt there amidst the ruins of his life, holding her, rocking back and forth, as the sun beat down and the carrion flies began to circle. A part of him died on that porch, withered and turned to dust in the space between one heartbeat and the next. But beneath the soul-deep anguish, a spark of fury kindled. He'd get his boy back, make the monsters pay even if it killed him. He and his wife had begged and pleaded, offered anything to get Caleb back. Wealth, service, their lives. The Alliance had stonewalled them, spewing platitudes about delicate negotiations and diplomatic channels. But Ryder could see the fear in their eyes, the spineless dread of confronting a species that could crack planets like eggs and considered humans little better than clever apes. The cocker had demanded the Alliance surrender the disputed mining world, a poisonous, volcano-racked hellscape called Gehenna, that nevertheless possessed rich seams of Kavita, the key to cheaper-than-light travel. The politicians caved, of course, hung Ryder's family out to dry for a few more years of peace and profit. Ryder upheld his end of the bargain, even as it curdled his guts with self-loathing. He'd stood by while the Alliance seeded Gehenna, praying to whatever dark gods might be listening that it would be enough, that he'd wake from this nightmare to see Caleb's bright, precious face smiling up at him. The universe had other plans. The cocker didn't return Caleb. Instead, they sent a vid file. Ryder could still hear his boy's agonized screams as those sadistic bastards dissected him. Could still see the terror and pain in his eyes, silently begging his daddy to save him as he breathed his last. Ryder had demanded justice, retribution, anything to make the monsters who butchered his boy pay. The Alliance brass just shrugged, spouting some bullshit about galactic stability and the need to avoid war with a technologically superior cocker dominion. They were too chicken to stand up for their own, but not Sergeant John Ryder. He didn't give a flying fuck about galactic politics or the consequences of his actions. The cocker had ripped out his heart and pissed on everything he held dear. It was time to return the favor, with interest. He'd rallied the poor, broken bastards in his platoon who'd lost kids to those alien freaks and gone rogue, stealing an Alliance frigate and vanishing into the void. For 2 years, they waged a guerrilla war, striking cocker targets, burning their colonies, giving them a taste of the pain and loss they had inflicted on so many human families. The Alliance declared them outlaws. Terrorists put a price on their heads high enough to buy a small moon. Ryder didn't care. Every charred cocker corpse was a balm to his battered soul. Every exploding enemy ship a hymn of retribution. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough until he'd ground the last of those child-murdering bastards to bloody smears beneath his boot heels. And now, standing on the bridge of his battered ship, staring at the swirling blue-green orb of the Cocker homeworld growing larger on the viewscreen, he finally had his chance. Intel said the bug-eyed freaks were in the midst of some kind of mass breeding cycle, their defenses lowered as they focused inward, probably replenishing all the warriors Ryder and his crew had smoked over the last few years. It was time to end this, for Caleb, for every human child whose screams haunted Ryder's dreams. He'd make the Cocker pay even if it killed him, even if it shattered the galaxy. Sergeant Private Finn, still baby-faced at 25, glanced up from the sensor station. I'm picking up some weird readings from the planet. It's like the whole place is pulsing with life signs, trillions of them. Ryder narrowed his eyes at the readout. The entire planet had been transformed into a single massive hatchery, a seething ocean of Cocker young waiting to spill out into the stars and spread their cruelty to every corner of the galaxy. Like hell, not on my watch. Looks like we caught the roaches with their pants down, Ryder growled. Helm, bring us in low and hot. Ready the nukes. It's time for a little pest control. Some of the newer recruits exchanged nervous looks. Ryder fixed them with a glare. This ain't about glory or revenge. It's about protecting our own, safeguarding our kids from these monsters. You don't like it? There's the airlock. Otherwise, shut up, strap in, and let me hear your battle cry. A few heartbeats of silence. Then, as one, the bridge erupted in a roar that shook the deck plates. Humanity, yeah. Ryder allowed himself a tight, fierce grin. That's goddamn right. Now let's show these aliens what happens when you mess with the human race. The ship plunged into the atmosphere, hull glowing cherry red as Cocker anti-aircraft fire streaked past. Ryder gripped the arms of the command chair, adrenaline surging through his veins. This was it. No going back. Captain, the comms officer frowned at her console. We're being hailed. This High Viceroy TikKTIL. He's demanding we stand down immediately or face. Put that bug-eyed freak on screen, Ryder snarled. I got a message for him and all his kind. The Cocker leader's chitinous visage filled the view screen, compound eyes glittering with malice.
Sergent Ryder, TikKTIL clicked, mandible twitching.
Your son squealed like a stuck grub pig when we emptied his guts onto the vivisection table. I wonder, will you scream the same when I rip out yours and festoon my thorax with your entrails? White-hot rage seared through Ryder's skull. He lunged to his feet, stabbing a finger at the screen. Listen up, you child-murdering sack of shit. I'm gonna burn your planet to a cinder then piss on the ashes. By the time I'm done, the only thing left of your species will be a bad smell and a greasy stain. TikKTIL's head crest flared in agitation, purple veins pulsing. Arrogant simian, you are one ship. We are billions. Our young will darken the stars and feast upon your worlds. This is only the beginning. Funny? Ryder's smile was a slash of white in his soot-streaked face. I was about to say the same thing. He cut the transmission and barked out orders, his crew scrambling to obey. Targeting coordinates locked in. Warheads armed. Caleb's face, contorted in agony, flashed before his mind's eye. This is for you, buddy, Ryder whispered. Daddy loves you. He mashed the firing button. The ship bucked and shuddered as a dozen 50-megaton nukes streaked toward the seething Cocker hatcheries below. A second sun blossomed on the planet's surface, then another and another. Continent-spanning fireballs, consuming all in their path. Billions of Cocker young boiled away in an instant, their psychic death screams reverberating across the galaxy. TikKTIL's ship, caught in the maelstrom, spun away, trailing smoke and debris. Ryder sagged back in his chair, exhaustion and soul-deep satisfaction warring within him. It was done. His boy was avenged. Now he could rest. The proximity alarm blared. Sergeant! Finn yelled, face white with terror. Massive energy surge off the port bow. It's a Cocker dreadnought. Ryder looked at Caleb's image one last time, then squared his shoulders. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Cocker would be out for blood now, determined to crush humanity once and for all. Let them try. Bring us about, he ordered, his voice calm and clear. Arm the railguns and prep for ramming speed. We'll give these alien bastards a taste of human ingenuity. The crew roared their assent, bloodlust and righteous fury lending strength to their voices. Humanity, yeah. The dreadnought loomed before them, an obsidian shark prowling the void. Ryder grinned, a death's head grin. The Cocker wanted a fight to the bitter end? They damn well got one. Cry havoc, he murmured. And let's slip the dogs of war. Ryder's ship plunged toward the Cocker dreadnought, the smaller human vessel dwarfed by the alien monstrosity. Ryder gripped the arms of his command chair, knuckles white, as the enemy ship filled the view screen. Steady, he growled. Hold course. The dreadnought's point defense lasers lashed out, stitching the frigate's hull with glowing scars. Ryder's ship shuddered under the onslaught, alarms shrieking, damage reports flooding in. He ignored them all. They were committed now, locked on a collision course. All that mattered was making these bastards bleed. Finn, he barked. Give me a target. Biggest concentration of bug eyes you can find. The private hunched over the sensor station, sweat beading his brow. There. Forecastle just aft of the forward gun batteries. Reading multiple life signs. Bridge, I bet. Ryder grunted. Helm. Adjust heading. Drive us right down their throats. The dreadnought loomed larger, its hull plates visible now, pitted and scarred from 1,000 battles. Ryder leaned forward, a feral light in his eyes. Viceroy Tik-KTIL. He snarled over the open comms channel. I know you're listening, you child-murdering sack of shit. I gutted your planet, torched your kids. Now I'm coming for you. The alien's response was immediate, incandescent with rage. Ryder, I will flay the skin from your bones and use your skull as a piss pot. You'll die screaming just like my boy did. Ryder's voice was cold and implacable as a black hole's heart. All hands, brace for impact. The human frigate slammed into the dreadnought like an avenging angel, all guns blazing. The collision sheared through the larger ship's armored hide like a power saw through rotten flesh, disemboweling decks and compartments, venting howling Cocker into the void. On the frigate's bridge, consoles exploded in showers of sparks, crewmen thrown from their stations by the bone-shattering impact. Ryder clung to his chair, tasting blood. Caleb's smiling face flashed before his eyes. Report! He roared over the chaos. Finn dragged himself up on the buckled deck, one arm hanging useless. Hull breach all decks, life support failing. But a savage grin split the private's bloody face. Forecastle breach. Bridge is open to space. We got the bastards. Ryder hauled himself to his feet, triumph searing through his veins like fire. He'd done it. Avenged his son. Broken the Cocker back. Nothing else mattered. The deck lurched sickeningly beneath his boots. The dreadnought was coming apart around them, the dying ship shaking itself to pieces. They had minutes, if that. Pods! Ryder croaked, limping for the door. Anyone who can move, get to the pods. Then, a thunderous boom echoed through the disintegrating ship. The hull peeled away above them like a ration can lid, revealing a swarm of Cocker fighters screaming toward the stricken frigate. Ryder stared up at the approaching aliens, a strange calm settling over him. So this was it. This was how he died, taking as many of these murderous bastards with him as he could. He reached for the TAC nuke controls, only to find Finn's hand already there. The private met his eyes, blood leaking from his nose and ears, and nodded. Together they mashed the firing button. A new sun bloomed at the heart of the dreadnought, a searing white radiance that consumed metal and flesh alike. The fighters vanished, flashed to vapor, and the two ships, locked in their fatal embrace, were blown to atoms. In the instant before oblivion claimed him, Ryder saw his son's face, no longer twisted in agony, but smiling and whole, waiting for him. I'm coming, buddy, he whispered. Daddy's coming home. The light took him, And Sergeant John Ryder, the man who led humanity's first strike against the Cocker, the father who moved heaven and earth to avenge his murdered son, became one with the stars. But his sacrifice, his rage and grief, and unrelenting will, lived on. The Cocker had hoped to cow humanity with a monstrous act of cruelty. Instead, they'd woken a sleeping giant and filled him with a terrible resolve. Across the breadth of the Terran Alliance, Ryder's words and deeds spread like wildfire, igniting a righteous fury in the hearts of all who heard them. Fleets mustered, soldiers rallied, and a species, united by loss and pain and iron-hard determination, poured forth from their worlds to take the war to the enemy. The Cocker, bloated with arrogance and assured of their own supremacy, looked to the stars and saw their doom descending upon them, with bared teeth and eyes bright with the promise of vengeance. The monsters who preyed upon the innocent, confident in their unassailable might, now trembled in terror as humanity's wrath crashed down like a thunderbolt. Colonies burned, armies shattered and broke. The once mighty Dominion, which had best rode the galaxy like a cruel colossus, found itself ripped apart, piece by piece, its subject races rising in rebellion, its fleets scattered and pursued to the ends of the universe by an implacable foe that could not rest until the debt of blood was paid. Through it all, one rallying cry echoed from ship to ship, from soldier to soldier, a promise and a prayer and a declaration of undying retribution. Humanity, yeah. In the end, there was no surrender, no quarter asked or given. The Cocker, who had once haunted the nightmares of 100 worlds, fought to the last. Every soldier, every ship, every festering nest of their vile brood, burned out and scoured away until nothing remained but ash and bitter memory. And Sergeant John Ryder, the martyr of Terrera, the father of victory, his body was never found, consumed by the nuclear fires he'd unleashed. But his legacy endured, immortalized in the history books and holodiscs, a shining example of humanity's indomitable spirit, of the lengths a parent would go to protect their child, to avenge an unspeakable wrong. In the years that followed, as the Alliance licked its wounds and began to rebuild, a new holiday was added to the calendar, a solemn remembrance of the blood and toil and grief that had bought their triumph. They called it Ryder's Day. And though the celebrations were raucous and the libations flowed freely, there was always a moment of silence, a raised glass to the man who'd sacrificed everything to keep the flame of hope and justice alive. And sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, a parent would tuck their child into bed and tell them the story of Sergeant John Ryder, who loved his son so fiercely, so completely, that he changed the face of the galaxy and ended the tyranny of monsters forever. In those moments, as sleep claimed them, and dreams painted their minds with bright visions of the future, the children of Terra would smile, comforted by the knowledge that no matter the darkness, no matter the odds, humanity would always stand tall, united by love and an unbreakable will, ready to spit in the eye of God, or the devil himself, ready to make the stars tremble with one defiant roar. Humanity, yeah.